All right, let's bring in former CIA covert ops and co-founder of Diligence LLC, Mike Baker. He's joining us now from Boise. Mike, good to see you. Let's talk about this, Mike. CBS News has confirmed that the White House has identified 3 leakers of classified information who are expected to be fired. Now, over the weekend, Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly called such leaks close to treason. That's a quote. Do you agree?
No, look, I've got a great deal of respect for John Kelly. I think he's a terrific guy, amazing experience, and the right fit for DHS. I'd stop short of sort of the venturing into that language where you start describing something like this as just short of treason. It's wrong. People need to understand that leaking sensitive or classified information it should have consequences. But short of treason, I think, is a bridge too far from my perspective.
Also on Sunday, the president tweeted, British Prime Minister May was very angry that the info the UK gave the US about Manchester was leaked. Gave me full details. Now, how would the two countries actually work together to prevent leaks, or does that responsibility really just fall on the US?
Well, it falls with both. I mean, every service, every government has the same issues, and the British have certainly had their problems over the years with leaks as well. And in fact, it was interesting at the outset of this, perhaps the British authorities have some very specific information that they've shared with the White House or others in our national security apparatus that it was definitely on our side of the water where the leaks originated from. I don't know. I mean, there's also the possibility that the leaks came from the British side. That's, how the world works nowadays. But the part of this was also public theater, meaning that despite the temporary suspension, which lasted, a handful of hours in intel sharing, on the ground, at the street level, where work gets done in counterterrorist operations, there's no daylight between the British operators in MI5 and the Counterterrorism Command SO-15 and MI6 and elsewhere, and our personnel in the Bureau and the CIA and other law enforcement. So, yes, there was this public theater, this public drama about the leaks, but, as often happens, the relationship off the radar between the services continues.
Mike, let's talk about something else that a lot of people have found really interesting. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Sunday Europe must, quote, take its fate into its own hands. What would a divide between the United States and Europe mean security-wise? And presumably she was talking about France and excluding the United States and Great Britain.
Yeah, I think there's been a fair amount written already about the recent meetings that the White House and President Trump had in relation to NATO. I think that what we're going to, in reality, see is we're not going to see this divide between the U.S. and NATO. It's too powerful, it's too strong, and there's too many individuals at the senior level of the new administration that understand the importance of NATO. Look, the fact that some, perhaps including the new leader of France, got their nose a little bit bent because we weren't as obsequious as they're used to seeing us when we come over and talking about the strength of NATO and rather asking them perhaps to pony up a few more euros. I don't think that's going to have any real impact stretching forward. I mean, people like General Mattis and certainly the command structure within the military, they understand the importance of NATO. Would it be nice if everybody puts in their whatever fair share means? Well, of course it would be, and I don't think a lot of people have an exception to that. The striking part was we're not used to seeing it being said, and I think it put them on their back heels a little bit over in the EU when the talk was quite as straightforward as it was from the new president.
Mike, were you surprised that the president did not confirm Article 5 when he was standing there in Brussels?
It's been pro forma, certainly in the past, and so I suppose it caught people by surprise to some degree that it wasn't said yet again. But again, at the working level, below that, what's not on the radar screen is this, a continued commitment. Would it have hurt for the president to, reaffirm that position? Well, no, it wouldn't have hurt at all. But much like what we've seen in a variety of other issues, that's a communications issue. That's a messaging and discipline issue, as opposed to some fundamental underlying change in U.S. policy. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. You never can say never. but I don't see any shift in our relationship with NATO coming anytime in our lifetimes.
And as for these reports about Jared Kushner looking to establish secret communications with the Kremlin, there's a lot of discrepancy about whether or not that would actually violate protocol, and that argument tends to fall along partisan lines. So you've had experience here. How does this sus with protocol, and what is typically done?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's nuanced, and unfortunately, stories nowadays don't necessarily lend themselves to nuance and lengthy explanation. So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, protocol is one thing. Protocol is sort of the formal, accepted way of doing things. Underneath that is the way things really get done. And back-channel communication lines have always existed, and administrations stretching back to George Washington. So, I'm not surprised that the idea that Jared Kushner or others, and who knows, I don't know who was authorizing this effort or who came up with the idea to begin with, so it would be speculation on my part. But I'm not surprised that a new White House was looking to establish additional communications channels. I'm not surprised either that it's, yet again, another issue. It really wouldn't matter. Whether it's Russia, it will be something. I mean, I think we can all agree on the fact that there is a resistance to this new administration, and whether the topic that they use to fire shots at the White House will be Russia or something next, this isn't going to change for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right that back channels have always existed between a presidential administration and allies and adversaries. But I guess the question a lot of people have right now is why make it a secret channel?
Well, I mean, back channels by definition aren't on the radar screen. I mean, that's how they work. You have, and again, we're speculating that this was not discussed in some meeting with Secretary Tillerson or others from the State Department. I mean, that would seem like a natural progression of things, or within the Pentagon, since part of what we were talking about, or what they were talking about, was trying to establish this back channel in order to find scenarios for Syria where we could work together, where interests might align. And our interests don't align with Russia very often. But perhaps, I suspect the White House was thinking perhaps Syria may be one of those areas where it could align. So, again, it's based on my experience, and that's all anybody can talk about is what they've seen in their past. And based on my experience, back channel communications usually aren't the sort of thing you put out there in the public spotlight.
Fascinating. All right, former CIA covert ops and co-founder of Diligence LLC, Mike Baker, thank you so much.